All right, so we're off to a later start than usual because it's been kind of a lackadaisical kind of day for me today. I did a lot of loafing around because it's my only day off. So sometimes it's a little hard for me to get motivated. But anyway, I got something to unbox for you today. I've got the uh, Page Punchers, DC Direct, Mcfarlane, Multiverse, Heat Wave. Comes with a comic book. There's a picture on the back with the comic book. Most of these were kind of wacky variants of characters. So they're not incredibly comic book accurate, is what I'm trying to say. None of them really are like the comic book versions. They're ones that were designed just for the toy. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad figures per se, but if you, it says the Flash comic, but it's not really the comic book version of Heatwave, is it? It might look like some kind of post New 52 version of it, but I kind of stopped paying attention to the comics with New 52, so that was kind of the end for me. But gonna open them up. We'll cut this excuse me piece of tape here. This is one I got a while back from Walmart when they I guess found a bunch of these in the warehouse and had them marked down to like $15 when they put them out in stores. And this was one that hung around for a little while longer after that. So I got him for like $8. And I wasn't too impressed with this design because it doesn't look much like how he looks in the comic book. And I wasn't originally planning on getting him, but hey, $8 is a pretty good deal. So this week I'm going to be opening up a bunch of Flash villains because I have uh, five, count them, five Flash villains to open up, including this guy. Uh, we've got the 2-pack of Reverse Flash and Thomas Wayne Batman. We've got Captain Cold. We've got Captain Boomerang. We've got Gorilla Grodd. And we've got this guy. So let's go ahead and open them up. We've been over this type of packaging before. We don't really need to go over it again. You already saw the back. That's the only really thing worth showing off, I guess. And we got a figure stand. Every figure should come with a figure stand. Unless it's superpowers, Mcfarlane's usually pretty good about giving our figures figure stands. And this one, since it's one of these page puncher numbers, it's in a little plastic baggie. It's all sealed up. There we go. And we can see it's our typical matte black DC Direct figure stand with a glossy DC logo on it. Set that aside for now. And then we got a full-sized comic book. So we'll have a quick look at the comic book. Since it is a full-sized comic book, we won't be reading it because that'll take too long. It ain't like the He-Man comics that are like 8 pages long. This is an actual, not a mini comic, just a comic, and it seems like a pretty thick one to me. Man, yeah, that's a hefty little tome. So we got Heat Wave, Grodd, Captain Cold, all there on the side, and then the background here, and it's like I said, those kind of funky designs they came up with, and Flash and the Atom and some armor. That's kind of reminiscent of what he had on the CW show, but it's not exactly. The artwork on the inside looks okay. It looks kind of it looks kind of 90s ish actually, and let's see who if it says who the artist is on this. I'm not seeing any credits here. Oddly enough, it's got an ad for Flash graphic novels, which does have credits listed for that. So one might be forgiven for thinking that was the credits for the inside of these. But the artwork looks nice. It kind of reminds me of John Byrne a little bit, like a guy who here it is. It's Scott Collins. Wow, I didn't think they'd get like a big name like that. It doesn't look as much to me like his usual work though, but that might just be because it's like drawing these funky costumes. And I haven't seen his stuff in a while, so he might have just evolved somewhat as an artist. But I can definitely see some John Byrne influence on the faces, especially. So that's nice. I like John Byrne. I like Zach Collins. He's a good artist. So I'll probably read that later. Anyway, we also have a trading card. So let's go ahead and talk about that trading card. I got to get that out of its little baggie, too. Everything's in a little baggie, its own separate little baggie. Which, just means more stuff I got to open. And I could just read it through the baggie, except for it's got printing on the back of the baggie, and that's getting in the way of reading the trading card. Okay, there we go. Heat wave, burning in my heat wave. All right, Page Punchers, Heat Wave. Real name Mick Rory. By the way, here's the front of the trading card. It's the same as the cover of the comic book. They get kind of lazy with these sometimes. That's what the back looks like. Real name Mick Rory. As he grew older, Mick's pyromania grew uncontrollable. Inspired by Central City's band of costumed supervillains, the Rogues, Mick invented a handgun-sized flamethrower and a flame-retardant suit for himself. He adopted the code name adopted the codename Heatwave as he began channeling his destructive urges into profit. And at some point, Heatwave, I remember in like the late '80s or so, he'd reformed and was trying to be a good guy, but I guess it didn't take. A lot of the times that doesn't take. Like I remember Sandman in Marvel Comics went through a similar thing, Spider-Man's enemy. But they put him back to being a bad guy too. Unfortunate. I really liked that arc. Anyway. So he's got little rubber bands around. Oh, he's got one around his. It's not even around his waist. It's around his torso and like almost like a bandolier or something. But he had rubber bands around each of his limbs and a double rubber band around his torso. Oh, you've got one more around your elbow. I already cut one on his wrist. Does he need another one on his elbow too? Jesus. It can get so vexing. All right, so here he is, and we can see instead of the handgun-sized flamethrower they talked about, he's got like almost like an entire arm-mounted cannon, almost like he's got a bionic arm, and that's going to hinder his articulation somewhat. He's got a rubber hose that connects it to his backpack here. So let's go ahead and talk about his articulation. And you can see, like I said, this is pretty much an original costume. This doesn't look much like his classic look. And even though these were $8, I only bought this one because I'm looking at him and I'm like, there's not really a whole lot I can do with him, like custom wise. Like it's like I couldn't think of anything anyway. Somebody, in hindsight, maybe I could have made like Shockwave or somebody. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about his articulation. So Heatwave can't look up very far because he's got all this clunky stuff around his shoulders. He can look down about that far. So he can look down a lot further than he can look up. Head should rotate all the way around. Yep, it sure does. He can tilt his head kind of quizzically from side to side. Arms rotate all the way around at the shoulders, at least on the right arm. On the left arm, he's going to be kind of stuck with that cord. So that can only do so much. And of course, he's got the Mcfarlane type butterfly joint, so we can get some more movement out of that. That's pretty cool. He can raise his arm up at the side about that far. He's got a double jointed elbow on his right arm. That's about the extent of motion you get on that. It looks like only a single joint of articulation on the left arm, but that does rotate all the way around, or at least it would if not for this cord. That cord is just going to get in the way a lot. So it's a nice little detail, but it does hinder the articulation somewhat. But he's got a bicep, so the little bicep rotates all the way around. Got the cool Mcfarlane wrist articulation. Actually doesn't have the cool Mcfarlane wrist articulation. He's just got wrist articulation that rotates all the way around and has a horizontal joint. For whatever reason, they did not. I'm just used to having it on there. I'm kind of surprised it's not. Especially because it's not like they had to put a wrist articulation onto his left hand, since it's underneath this thing. but yeah, so that's kind of weird that they did that. he's got the Mcfarlane kind of torso, wobbles around this way and that way, and turns around at the wrist. Both the wrist and the torso articulation rotate all the way around and have that Mcfarlane sort of wobble. Heat Wave can kick up about that far. He's got a little bit of movement side to side here, but doesn't rotate all the way around. I don't even know if that's intended on this guy. He's got double jointed knees. That's about the range of motion you get at the knee. There's no boot cut, and he does not have the cool Mcfarlane ankle articulation. It doesn't look like. It looks like that's all like. It looks like it's sculpted to be that way, but they didn't bother to give him one. So, so yeah, his foot can point down all the way that far. He can point all the way up that far. He's got a little bit of toe articulation, but it doesn't really make much of a difference because his boots are so clunky. Man, I am disappointed in this figure. I'm glad I only paid $8 for it because he is not that great. He's got a lot of problems. He's not as well articulated as these Mcfarlane figures usually are, and his costume is not very accurate to what he looks like in the comic books, at least not normally. I don't know if they put him like this at some later point in the comic after I stopped caring about, the New 52 and like that got me out of it. But even if he did, I'd much rather have like the classic look for Heat Wave. But yeah, he's disappointing. So I'm glad that I started off with him because we're sure to only go up from here. I've spent like 12 minutes talking about this figure, and I feel like that's enough. Plus, like I said, I'm getting off to such a late start that technically it's already Tuesday for me when I really want to do this on Monday. And it's still kind of Monday for me because I haven't really been to sleep yet. But I'm probably going to go to sleep soon. I might try to do another one in the afternoon, maybe. But I don't know for certain if I'm going to do that. If not, I'm probably going to try to double up at some point, or I'm going to wind up doing a Sunday show because I want to do all 5 of these Flash villains this week. But yeah, Heat Wave is kind of a dud. Heat Wave is not so hot. Sorry to say, but don't worry, we got a lot of cool stuff coming up that's going to be way cooler than this guy. Like I said, I was reluctant to even buy him before until I saw him for $8, and I'm like, Mcfarlane figure for $8, that's pretty good. But yeah, $8 is probably about the most I would want to pay for this guy. I'm sorry to say. So and with the line coming to a close within the year, summer of 2026, that's going to be it for Mcfarlane. But yeah, it's like it's highly unlikely we'll get a classic version of Heatwave at this point, I think. But we did get a classic version of Captain Cold, and he's one of my absolute favorite Flash villains. And we've got him coming up. We've got Reverse Flash. We've got Gorilla Grodd, and we've got Captain Boomerang. So I think I'll do Captain Boomerang next. He's another one I got for cheap. So, but I'm sure he's going to be a much better figure than this guy was. This is probably the worst Mcfarlane figure that I've opened up on this show. I think I'm like, I didn't have high hopes for him going into it, and I'm actually like, what do you call it when you have low expectations and they're still not met? It's like, am I really disappointed? Yeah, because I definitely expected more out of the figure than this. But like I've seen people say on here, I like your show because you stay pretty positive, and I like to think that I give these figures a fair shot, and I try not to be too hard on him. But he's just not that great. I can't recommend him unless you see him for $8. He might be worth $8, and then you can just have him stand with the rest of your Flash villains, and maybe he'll look impressive with the rest of the group. But as it is, not so great. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you like and subscribe and all the fun YouTube stuff down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about Heatwave, both the character and this figure. And am I being too harsh? Are you somebody who has this figure? Do you think he's better than I'm giving him credit for? Maybe you think that I'm not being harsh enough and I should have come down harder on Heatwave. But but yeah, let me know in the comments. I always like seeing comments, even the ones that are negative, which I do occasionally see. Even if I get a laugh out of those sometimes. But anyway, that's it for this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.